Ivan Pavlov, a Russian physiologist, is renowned for his pioneering work in classical conditioning, a theory that has profoundly influenced psychology and behavioral science. Pavlov's experiments with dogs, conducted in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, illuminated how behaviors could be conditioned through associations between stimuli and responses. The effects of his work extend far beyond his initial findings, influencing fields such as psychology, education, marketing, and even neuroscience. This essay explores the principles of Pavlov's conditioning experiments, their broader implications, and their lasting influence on various fields. Pavlov's discovery of classical conditioning. Pavlov's groundbreaking work began with his research on the digestive system. While studying salivation in dogs, he noticed that the animals began salivating not only when food was presented, but also when they heard the footsteps of the lab assistant bringing the food. Intrigued by this phenomenon, Pavlov designed experiments to understand the relationship between stimuli and responses. In his experiments, Pavlov paired a neutral stimulus, e.g. the sound of a bell, with an unconditioned stimulus, e.g. food, that naturally elicited an unconditioned response, e.g. salivation. After repeated pairings, the neutral stimulus alone was sufficient to evoke the salivation response, now termed the conditioned response. This process demonstrated that behaviors could be learned through association. Pavlov's findings established the fundamental principles of classical conditioning. 1. Acquisition, the phase during which a neutral stimulus becomes associated with an unconditioned stimulus. 2. Extinction, the gradual weakening of the conditioned response when the conditioned stimulus is no longer paired with the unconditioned stimulus. 3. Spontaneous recovery, the reappearance of an extinguished conditioned response after a pause. 4. Generalization, the tendency for stimuli similar to the conditioned stimulus to elicit the conditioned response. 5. Discrimination, the ability to distinguish between similar stimuli and respond differently. The effects of Pavlov's research, understanding learning and behavior. Pavlov's research provided a scientific framework for understanding how organisms learn from their environment. By demonstrating that responses could be conditioned through repeated associations, he established the foundation for the study of learning and behavior. His work also debunked the idea that all behaviors are innate, emphasizing the role of environmental influences in shaping responses. Classical conditioning helps explain various human and animal behaviors, including habits, phobias, and emotional reactions. For instance, fear responses can develop through conditioning when a neutral stimulus becomes associated with a traumatic event. Similarly, positive associations can create preferences or attachments to certain stimuli. Applications in psychology. Pavlov's work has had a significant impact on the field of psychology, particularly in behaviorism, which emphasizes the study of observable behaviors rather than internal mental states. Psychologists such as John B. Watson and B. F. Skinner expanded upon Pavlov's principles to develop comprehensive theories of behavior. Watson applied classical conditioning to human behavior, famously conditioning a fear response in an infant known as Little Albert. This experiment demonstrated how emotional responses, such as fear, could be learned through association. Pavlov's research also influenced therapies for treating phobias and anxiety disorders, such as systematic desensitization and exposure therapy, which use principles of extinction to reduce conditioned responses. Influence on education. In education, classical conditioning has been used to shape classroom environments and student behavior. Teachers often use positive reinforcement to create associations between learning and positive experiences, fostering motivation and engagement. For example, praising students for correct answers can encourage active participation and reinforce learning. Conversely, educators strive to avoid negative associations that may create anxiety or aversion to certain subjects. Classical conditioning also explains the development of test anxiety. If a student repeatedly experiences stress during exams, the mere sight of a test paper can evoke a conditioned fear response. Understanding this phenomenon allows educators to implement strategies to reduce anxiety, such as relaxation techniques or creating a supportive environment. Marketing and consumer behavior. Pavlov's principles have been widely applied in marketing to influence consumer behavior. Advertisers use classical conditioning to create positive associations between their products and desirable emotions or experiences. For instance, pairing a product with pleasant imagery, music, or celebrity endorsements can condition consumers to associate the brand with positive feelings, increasing its appeal. Brand loyalty is often reinforced through conditioned responses. Over time, consumers may develop automatic preferences for certain brands due to repeated exposure and positive associations. This understanding of conditioning has shaped modern advertising strategies and consumer psychology. Neuroscience and behavior. Advances in neuroscience have further illuminated the biological mechanisms underlying classical conditioning. Pavlov's findings laid the groundwork for studying how neural circuits in the brain facilitate learning and memory. Researchers have identified brain regions such as the amygdala and hippocampus that play critical roles in processing conditioned responses and storing associative memories. The study of classical conditioning has also contributed to understanding disorders like post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, where traumatic memories become strongly associated with specific stimuli. Treatments based on extinction principles, such as exposure therapy, aim to weaken these associations and alleviate symptoms. Societal and cultural implications. Beyond individual behavior, classical conditioning has influenced societal and cultural phenomena. Propaganda and political messaging often rely on associative learning to shape public opinion. By pairing certain symbols or slogans with emotional appeals, leaders and organizations can condition collective responses, fostering loyalty or opposition. Pavlov's work has also contributed to the study of addiction. The association between drug use and environmental cues, such as specific locations or social settings, can trigger cravings and relapses. Understanding these associations has informed interventions to break the cycle of addiction and promote recovery. Criticisms and limitations. Despite its broad applicability, classical conditioning has faced criticism and limitations. Some argue that Pavlov's experiments oversimplified complex behaviors, focusing narrowly on observable responses without considering internal cognitive processes. Critics also highlight that classical conditioning does not fully account for voluntary behaviors, which are better explained by operant conditioning, another form of learning developed by Skinner. Moreover, ethical concerns have been raised about experiments involving animals, including Pavlov's work with dogs. While his research provided valuable insights, modern standards of animal welfare emphasize the need for humane treatment in scientific studies. Lasting legacy. Ivan Pavlov's contributions to science have left an indelible mark on multiple disciplines. His discovery of classical conditioning revolutionized our understanding of learning and behavior, inspiring generations of researchers and practitioners. From psychology and education to marketing and neuroscience, the principles of conditioning continue to shape theories, practices, and interventions. Pavlov's legacy also underscores the importance of curiosity and observation in scientific discovery. What began as an incidental observation during digestive research evolved into a foundational theory of learning, demonstrating the interconnectedness of scientific disciplines. The effects of Ivan Pavlov's conditioning experiments have transcended their original context, influencing diverse fields and shedding light on the mechanisms of learning and behavior. By uncovering how associations between stimuli and responses shape behavior, Pavlov not only advanced our understanding of the human mind, but also paved the way for practical applications in education, therapy, marketing, and neuroscience. His work remains a cornerstone of psychological science, illustrating the enduring of discovery to transform knowledge and society.